I have returned from Egypt. I was invited to participate in an activation at the Great Pyramid during the conjunction of Uranus and Jupiter. That activation for the pyramid was also for the planet. It was for the timeline that humanity is on currently now. The ceiling of the Great Pyramid was not there for me. All I saw was the cosmos. I could see the etheric beings of priests and priestesses all around that space. She entered my body and guided my body and my hands and also my voice in expressing light language. I was being guided to direct energy up into the space. The energy erupted from the top of the pyramid and it spread out all the way through Egypt and covered the entire globe. Humanity has made a choice to change timelines and to be in a space where we are moving toward the light. The Sphinx whispered to me, "You are welcome to bring groups here. Your way is clear." Hello, everyone. I have returned from Egypt. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Eluña. I am a psycho-spiritual healer and an Akashic channeler. I have just returned from my first journey to Egypt, and what a journey it was. It is certainly the most activating and most warmly welcomed experience I have ever had in my life. It was deeply transformative and has truly changed the course of my life, and I would like to share a little bit about that. There are so many stories that I could share about my time there, and I am going to take you through some of the most significant, and one day hopefully be able to share even more with all of the details of every download and activation that I experienced while I was there. This story, like all good stories, begins on an airplane. And it was while I was on my way to Egypt, I was meditating. And in my meditation, just before coming out of it, my guides told me that I would be leading trips and journeys to Egypt to experience the sacred lands so that others and groups could be able to experience it as well. And I argued with them a little. I said, how could that be? I have not even been there yet. I did not understand. They simply told me that I would understand. And now I do. The first night that I arrived in Egypt, I was welcomed to participate in an experience that I will never forget. I was invited to participate in an activation at the Great Pyramid during the conjunction of Uranus and Jupiter in the Taurus constellation, I do believe. That activation for the pyramid was also for the planet. It was for the timeline that humanity is on currently now. And it was also an activation for myself, of course. They are mutual, and for every person that participated. During that experience, it was my first time going into the Great Pyramid, and we were alone, so we had a private access for this group. It was in the middle of the night. I don't remember the exact time, but maybe 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And we went up to the king's chamber. I was guided and instructed in the physical and the etheric of how to enter this sacred space and how to make my presence known, how to ask for permission to enter, and I was welcomed. Upon entering the king's chamber, immediately there began, just intuitively, with no words spoken, sound resonance from the entire group, and that went on for some time. I had quite an experience there. I was For the first time I have experienced in this lifetime, I could see the etheric beings of priests and priestesses all around that space. The ceiling of the Great Pyramid was not there for me. I actually didn't realize there was a ceiling until I went back the next time, because when I looked up when I was in there, all I saw was the cosmos. I thought we were underneath the sky, and I was in a trance state, so it didn't occur to me as odd or out of the ordinary that I would be looking up at the sky. After I had received some activations from being at what is called the sarcophagus, but I will call it the initiation box, if you will, because that is really what it is, or the healing box. It's not a place for a mummy, so it's not actually a sarcophagus. Once I had finished my time there, one of the priestesses that I could see, who was just a being of light in the space, she came to me and she guided me for the duration of my time in the Great Pyramid and instructed me to kneel down. And when I did so, she entered my body and guided my body and my hands and also my voice in expressing what I believe is light language. It's not something I have ever done before, and I had not ever heard it before, but she was doing energetic attunements in my body and primarily in my energy chakras, my energy centers in my body. So this experience with this group, it aligned just so that every single pyramid, of which there are 3 on the Giza Plateau, every single one was available to reserve for a private group at exactly the same time. And the people who watch over those spaces were willing to open every single chamber within each of the pyramids. And so what that meant was that the group, when they were intuitively guided, could move to the different spaces that they felt called to go to activate them accordingly. I was guided from this priestess to go to the subterranean chamber of the Great Pyramid, which is the same pyramid I was in. So I immediately went down, which is a very long way, by the way. I went down and they opened it up for me. I was the first person to leave the group. I was just following the priestess, so I left. And a fellow sister, embodied in physical form, was also guided to leave at the same time, and she followed me out. And when she heard that I was going to the subterranean chamber, she said, "That's exactly where I have been guided to go." So we both went together. There is a shaft that goes all the way to the back end of the pyramid, and it just stops there. If you're of a certain size, you actually would not be able to fit inside of this space because it's very small. So we crawled and shimmied our way in. When we got to the very back, I realized I was guided and knew that I had entered into a womb space and needed to lie down in the fetal position to allow this work to happen on me, because it would mean that I was surrendering. That's essentially what that position would indicate to the energies present. So I laid in the fetal position on the dirt in the pitch black, and this sister who was present with me, she was guided to chanting and emoting certain sounds, and it deeply activated and released things in my being and deep within my own womb. And I realized that this was the birth of the true divine feminine mother aspect within me. So it was an activation of my womb space as a divine mother. So when the time came for us to leave, we did the shaft. We left the shaft, and exactly at that moment, someone else in the group entered the space, and he knew that he needed to stay where he was. We sat in the pitch black, and I could feel his energy present in the room, and what I saw was his energy as a blue light swirling around the space. My energy joined as a pink light swirling just opposite of his, and this went on for some time while I was doing energy work, so I was being guided to direct energy up into the space and to move it around the space. Once I got enough momentum of this energy going, these two spheres rotating and really orbiting around one another, from the middle and from the depths of the pyramid, but also from underneath the earth, this yellow ball of energy appeared in the middle and also began swirling, but in its own orbit, and the other two spheres were orbiting around it. I then was guided and instructed to pull up these massive sheets of energy from the earth. And again, this experience, I have never been guided like this in my life to do such intense energy work. While I was pulling this up, I could feel and see in these sheets of energy this toxic energy and this poison in the earth, which I truthfully didn't expect. I know that our earth is being poisoned in so many ways, but to actually see and experience it was a very different phenomena for me. There was a lot in there. So I pulled up sheet after sheet, massive. If you can picture like sheets of ice, that is what I mean. They're very thick. They were very, very dense that I was pulling out, and it took a lot. I was sweating profusely. It was a lot of work. I was pulling those out to make room for new energies to enter and to alleviate some of the stress and the pressure in the earth, because it's so much for her to carry and to not have clearing happen for her. So I cleared that out. And the next piece that I was guided to doing was to use this energy that is still swirling around the space to charge it with love and to essentially bring up from the depths of the earth all of the love and the joy that I possibly could get into one space at one time, send it up and out through the top of the pyramid. When this happened, which I did this several times, the energy in a way erupted from the top of the pyramid, and it spread out first around the pyramid itself, then it spread out into the land around the pyramid, and then out all the way through Egypt. It spread through the continent of Africa, it spread through Asia and Europe, and then it finally made its way over to South America and North America and covered the entire globe. So this experience was a way to affirm for many beings that humanity has made a choice to change timelines and to be in a space where we are moving toward the light. This started on actually the day of the eclipse. That was the choice point. So the choice was presented to humanity. Humanity said, yes, we want the light. This conjunction was the confirmation or affirmation of that choice, of saying, we are really serious. This is what we are choosing. So that was the most deeply activating experience I have ever had in my life. It was the most mystical and deeply humbling and honoring experience I have ever had in my life. To be welcomed to participate in that is truly beyond words for me. And of course, this entire experience all called for trust. All I could do was listen while I was in that state and trust that what I was doing was exactly what was meant to be. And it was Later, during a time when some people from this group, much later in the day, when people were sharing that I got the confirmation that this did indeed happen because others expressed how they also saw the pyramid light up. They experienced the 5D frequency and resonance come through in the Great Pyramid. They experienced love and joy. They saw the energy come out from the top of the pyramid. It was all... and I have goosebumps just retelling that. It was all a beautiful, incredible confirmation. So, after this incredible activation, we went to the Sphinx, and again, we had private access. We were so blessed to have this private access to these spaces, and we got to watch the sunrise with the Sphinx. And that was my first time with that beautiful being again, and I feel so much emotion. It is truly a beautiful being. I never could have understood if I had not gone there myself. And I spent such time with it. And the Sphinx whispered to me almost just before leaving. They said, "You are welcome to bring groups here. Your way is clear." And I hadn't even asked, but I was welcomed to do that. And once again, that felt like a beautiful confirmation, and I understood now what my guides had shared with me on the plane. So I will skip ahead slightly. The next deep activation that I received was with Hathor at her temple. She downloaded information about her form of healing, or one of her forms of healing. And this is actually so much I am not yet able to put it into words quite yet. It is slowly sinking in. But her exact words are, it is the energetic matrices of the body that she is able to heal. And so she has been every day, actually, since that initial activation, she has been teaching me and showing me more and more what that means and the way to do that. It is energetic. There are several layers to these energetic matrices in the body, and each one has a different impact on our experience, both physical and otherwise. And so she is guiding me in that, and I am blessed and honored to receive this teaching from her. And I very much look forward to sharing this one day with others, because this healing is incredibly deep. And then, after Hathor's temple, we made our way farther south to Aswan, a beautiful place. Aswan is a place where cultures blend, and there's a meeting of the Egyptian Arabic culture and the Nubian culture. It is filled with beauty in the people, in the language, in the music, in the food. It is absolutely stunning. And in that place, there is the sacred and ancient site of the Isis temple. The actual temple itself has been moved. The whole structure has been relocated just a little bit of ways. You travel by boat everywhere you go down there. I was invited to visit privately the ancient location of Isis, and so at sunset, I left the group and traveled by boat to her original temple. And while I was there, I was guided divinely. This was my final night in Egypt, and one of the most profound activations. I was given a mission by Isis while I was there. So I was guided to enter her temple through her original entry, When I came through, everything changed around me. It was a bit like everything... It was almost like a filter was put over the world, and things moved a bit slower, and the colors felt somehow more vivid, but also slightly faded. I felt somewhat far away from everything, but at the same time, everything felt more vivid. It was a very interesting in-between place to be. I was guided to this incredibly beautiful and clearly ancient tree that I didn't learn until later was a mango tree. And I was guided immediately to this place on the tree where the sacred divine symbol of the feminine was, the symbol of, if you will, the eye, or if you do a Venn diagram, the image that is in the middle of that. I was guided to that exact space on the tree, and when I placed my hand on it, I was told that this was an embodiment of Isis, and Isis began to speak through me. She instructed me to sit before her in front of this place on the tree, and she guided me through the activation that I would be doing at the other temple site later that evening. So, the story, she told me that I would be using this energy work that I had been guided to practice over the course of my time in Egypt, energy work that I have not ever done before. She told me that this was kind of a culmination of what I had learned so far on my journey. So I would be using that energy work, which involves keeping my energy in, bringing my energy out, and then simultaneously bringing energy in from the cosmos and up from the earth and sending it back out again. It's a bit more complex than that, but that is in essence what it is. She told me that I would be using that method to take the energy that is present at her ancient site to then give birth to it at her other site. And this is an activation, but more accurately, it is a reactivation of her space, which is really what happens at all sacred spaces. They must be reactivated consistently, cleared and reactivated simply because of the public using them and the relocations that have happened, etc. And so this was an opportunity for me to be a part of a reactivation of her site. She instructed me as to how I would ground the energy there. I had to spread out the energy, and in the four corners, I had to use a shape like a spiral shell to place into the corners to anchor down the energy that I had just brought up and given birth to there. She told me that this needed to happen in an energetic sense from my work, but I also needed to bring a physical representation in order to mount this energy truly in the physical so that it could last for a longer period of time. She told me that I would find 4 small white spiral shells. Upon coming out of this trance-like state, I would find them immediately, and those were the 4 that I needed to bring with me. And there would be a final piece that she did not reveal that I would know when I received it that would go into the very middle of her temple complex, where I would anchor in the remaining energy and essentially give birth to her as a tree there. I would bring in the tree of life, but the tree of Isis, into that space in the middle. So once she finished telling me this, and she did some energy work on me, and I also had to bring the energy up into my being, I had to hold it in my womb space. And that was a very interesting sensation, I will say. I've not felt that before. It was like a feeling of being very full, and it's actually rather difficult to explain, but it was almost like a pressure and a feeling of fullness deep in my womb. So when I opened my eyes, sitting on the skirt of my dress was the first white shell. So it was sitting there, and I collected it. I walked simply around the tree, the outskirts around the tree, and found immediately the other 3 shells. I knew that it was then time to return because the sun was officially setting, and it would be almost time to go to the other temple complex to then complete this mission and this activation. On the boat ride back, the guardian, the sacred guardian that had invited me to come to the ancient temple because he knew that I was there on a mission. He simply knew and said, "You need to come to this space." He, with no words, held out his hand and placed in my hand a small rose quartz heart. And I knew that that was the piece that I needed to restore the heart of Isis in her temple. I have full body chills telling all these stories. I haven't shared them with anyone. So I went back to the retreat space that we were staying at before going to the temple. And that was a very interesting experience for me because it was another 3 or 4 hours before we had our private access visit. And so that meant holding this focus and this energy in my womb for that entire time. I had been guided that I could not drop it because it would be like dropping a sacred egg. It would crack and then I wouldn't have it anymore. So I had to hold it. Again, very deeply activating, and what a culminating experience to hold focus for that and hold the energy in me for over about 4 hours from when we actually got to go. On the way to the temple, I was up on the roof of the boat, simply with my eyes closed. While it moved, I could feel that I was just held up by the goddess herself, and my eyes were closed the whole time, and I was perfectly held. I did not get off balance. It was an incredible experience, just that feeling, that sensation of being completely held. We arrived and docked, and once our private access started, I guided the group that we were with to enter into their own space of their own inner womb. This is a time for you to trust and to know that where your feet are guiding you is exactly where you are meant to be. I knew that that is what I also needed to do, as I had no idea what this temple complex looked like, and it is massive. It covers a large portion of this island that it is on, and I had no idea what it looked like. I still don't know what it looks like, actually. I cannot tell you. But I knew exactly where I needed to go and what I needed to do. I started in what I know to be the ancient site of the temple. The original temple was in one space. I went there first. I had to activate some things, clear some things, and then it was in an adjacent room that I placed the first shell. My experience going around the entire complex was I was in the pitch black. There were certain spaces and reliefs of hieroglyphics that I needed to touch and engage with to receive different downloads and energetic attunements. So while I was doing that, the other piece that I was doing was, upon entering 2 spaces that I learned the next day is the birth house, actually, there in the temple. There was some there was mischievous and dark energy in those spaces, and it was pitch black. You cannot see a thing, and I had to enter those spaces in the pitch black and intuitively feel where I needed to go. And I will say I saw some very frightening things. I have not had an experience like that since I was very, very young, seeing something so frightening. But I did not feel any fear whatsoever. I knew that I was protected and divinely guided, and I knew that it was presenting itself to me I could see it because I was there to clear it. So that is what I did, and the energies left. I finished going around the entire complex, placing the shells in the corners as I was guided. The space that I had originally entered was the energetic center of the temple complex. So it is not the physical center, it is the energetic center. And that is where I needed to give birth to this energy in my womb, place the rose quartz heart in the middle, and give birth and energy to the growth of the tree of Isis. So that was a deep activation and a very interesting release. It was slightly, I don't want to say painful, slightly uncomfortable. I could just feel it releasing, and it was almost like my body had gotten accustomed to having it, and then it was gone. So I gave birth to that while I was there, and the tree was able to begin its growth process. And just as soon as I had finished, they turned the light on to instruct us that it was time to go. So everything was perfectly timed, of course. And I have to say, when this finished, I was informed from my guides and from Isis and Hathor that I have been invited to leading other groups to have activations at these sacred sites, because as I said in the beginning, the activation of those who go to these places is also the activation of all of humanity, but also the reactivation of these sacred sites. And that is what we need. That is what we are here for. It is part of how we are going to transform the energies on this planet to restore us to a place of sacred sovereign knowing in our heart centers. That is what these places represent, and that is the opportunity available to each of us when we go there. My guides were very clear on the plane ride over. They told me that it would be September and October that I would be leading groups, and I asked them why, and they said, well, for the eclipses, of course. And I had no idea what they were talking about, and I didn't look into it. It was one of the days that I was there after the Great Pyramid activation that someone said, there are 2 eclipses at the end of this year. And I said, oh, when are they? And she said, the lunar eclipse is in September and the solar eclipse is in October. So that, my dear friends and my precious family, that is when I will be leading my very first journey and pilgrimage in this lifetime to the ancient lands of Chem. The first journey will begin around September 15th for the lunar eclipse that is taking place a couple days after. We will be present for the equinox, which is one of the most powerful days to be in those lands during. And then we will also have a second half of the journey for those who wish to continue for the solar eclipse in October. This is going to be a journey of deep activation. It is a sacred pilgrimage, and it is not a vacation. I want to be very clear about that. This experience for me was not a vacation. It was a deep activation and remembering, and also a calling into my divine mission and my path at this time on the planet. And I am sincerely and truly blessed and honored to say those words. It is the greatest honor that I could possibly be given in this lifetime so far. And I welcome you to join me. It will be divinely orchestrated and beyond words in the beauty that you will experience. I welcome you to take all of this in, to listen again if you feel called, to listen to your own inner being and your own inner guidance as to what resonates, as to what comes alive in you from these words? What do you remember from listening to these stories that I have shared? And do you feel called to reactivate and remember a deeper part of who you are with me? I am so looking forward to sharing so much more with you in person and online. And until we meet again, I am sending you my sincerest love. May you remember all of your magic today.